Hi, I'm Erik Hall, the digital sports editor at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I'm joined by Paul Anger, who was APSE president in 94, 95, while sports editor at the Miami Herald. He worked at the Miami Herald from 1972 to 2001. He was then later vice president and editor of the Des Moines Register from 2002 to 2005, and then he was editor and publisher at the Detroit Free Press from 2005 to 2015. Thanks for joining me, Paul.
Hey, Erik, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
You were in fact the inspiration for doing this series of interviews. You spoke at the summer conference last year in Indianapolis, and after that, I mentioned to George that because George Rojas was talking about this being the 50th year, that we should get interviews with all the past presidents that we can. So you were the inspiration for this.
Well, that's great to hear. I was so honored, really, to be at APSE last summer, and actually also to remember my friend, mentor, hero, one of the APSE founders, Ed Storen. It really meant a lot to me to get back to APSE in the first place. Haven't been with you guys for a while, but also to be able to talk about Eddie in a meaningful way. I really appreciated that opportunity, Erik. So great to be back again.
How did you get involved with APSE?
Well, we've mentioned Ed Storen, right? So Ed Storen was one of the founders of APSE 50 years ago. 50 years ago, 51 actually, is when I started in the Miami Herald sports department, fresh out of Wisconsin and Oshkosh and Fond du Lac. And Ed Storen every once in a while would talk about this organization that the sports editors were trying to start up, and he would make comments about it and that sort of thing. And so honestly, I think I got started in APSE because it was sort of in my blood. The moment I got into sports journalism in Miami with Ed Storen and looking around at what he was doing, and it just seemed an exciting time. That sports editors were really getting together, improving the craft, proving their worth, having impact across the country. And so I actually, I think after I got to be sports editor, after Ed Storen, who still supervised me when I was sports editor, because he was associate managing editor, after he retired, I think I really thought more and more about just how much APSE meant, and that it was sort of my time to get involved. And I think I gravitated naturally into APSE.
How did you then become president of the organization in 94?
Well, I got on the stepladder. It's as simple as that. And like I say, I just figured, after you put in some time and you look around and you get a feel for what's going on and what's needed in the industry and in sports departments, and maybe if you've had some success, you can share it with others, you can learn from others as well. And I thought, look, Storen put in his time, others have put in their time, and I think it's my time. And so I decided to run for office. I became got into the officer stepladder and eventually became president.
Can you share some more details about an incident with the NCAA where they threatened to keep newspapers that publish point spreads from getting credentials for events?
Well, in 1994, I think it was, the NCAA Division I men's basketball committee, the committee that made the rules, made the assignments, and so forth for the NCAA basketball tournament, Division I, they got it in their heads that it would be that gambling was becoming an issue, a problem. And for the integrity of the sport and all this kind of thing, they decided that it might be a good idea to deny NCAA tournament credentials to any newspapers that ran point spreads or odds, the latest line was popular back then. A lot of papers used it. So the funny thing was, I was president, but the Miami Herald really didn't run regular season point spreads. I kind of had a little bit of an issue and kind of a feeling that gambling maybe wasn't all that healthy to teams, to players, to gamblers that might have an addiction. And who does anybody really care who's favored between Wyoming and Colorado State in late January? I wouldn't be, and I'm a pretty good sports fan. However, that was an attempt by the NCAA to censor newspapers, censor sports sections, and we couldn't have that. Regardless of what we did at the Miami Herald, it should have been every news organization's choice, whether they wanted to run point spreads or some kind of odds, whatever they wanted to do. That was up to them. And it wasn't the NCAA's place to try to censor us. So that became quite a little tiff for a while. We thought we were going to have to go to court. APSE did. We enlisted the aid of APME, ASNE, SPJ. We started pushing back as strongly as we could. We had meetings with the NCAA, and the NCAA eventually backed down. One thing that did come out of that was we had a symposium that was videotaped on, it was myself and some other sports editors that talked about, and representatives of the NCAA talked about the issue of gambling and so forth. And we got into that. And we also got into the fact that it's the newspaper's prerogative to avoid censorship and to publish what each individual news organization thought they should be able to publish. And it was a good discussion. It got a little airtime in different places, but the NCAA backed down. And as far as I know, it hasn't come up again. So I think that was a win for APSE, which has had a lot of wins over the years.
How was that for you to balance your personal feelings with what you felt sounds like was your duty as president of APSE? Well,
it's not that I was a zealot against gambling. I mean, I get in the office pools. I bet with my friends. There's an Anger family bowl pool. Once football bowl season starts. So it's not like I was a crusader. I just felt like, look, we only have so much space in the sports section, and you want to use that wisely. And we just decided, and it wasn't just me, it was others in the sports department. We decided, let's not bother with that. It's not something we have to do. I don't think sports fans really care. And honestly, we didn't get complaints about it. Now maybe I'm remembering selectively, but there was no groundswell of complaint. Oh my gosh, the Miami Herald is not running the latest line. No, we really didn't get complaints. When it became more of general interest, when you got into playoffs in the different sports, we would run the odds. We thought that was of more general interest. But anyway, that's the way that went down.
Some of the presidents around your time being president were Bye and Sandy Rosenbush. And can you discuss them specifically, or anybody else contributions and that they made to the organization around that time?
Well, we talked about how I got involved in APSE, and I really admired a lot of the efforts, partly through Ed Storen and then partly on my own as time went along. You look at people like, Dave Smith and Henry Freeman, who paid attention to the bylaws and the budget. Ed Storen, we could talk for an hour and a half about Ed Storen. And I think as you go along in an organization like that, you start to look at first the people whose shoulders you're standing on, and that would be the Dave Smiths and Ed Storens and Wayne Fusens Earl Cox, and then you look around and you have your peers who are also standing on those shoulders. And now it's your turn to lead. And I remember in the 90s, I think to some extent we were a bit like the Three Amigos, Dale Bye and Sandy Bailey back then, Sandy Rosenbush. And I really worked together very, very well. We were really good colleagues, and became really, really good friends and bonded with each other. And I think that's true of each generation of APSE leadership, approving the shoulders that you're standing on, bonding and working well with your generation, if you want to put it that way, and then let somebody else stand on your shoulders. But Dale started the regional workshops, Sandy with the Sports Journalism Institute. And honestly, during my time as president, I did my best to enhance and build on those things that they had started. And I was very, very proud of them. I have immense respect for them to this day.
Do you have any particular anecdotes or memories of collaborating and working with them?
Well, we would say what if quite a bit. We'd say, well, what if we did? What does APSE need? What if we did this? We need to increase participation among women, among people of color. What if we started a Sports Journalism Institute? Now, that was Sandy. That wasn't me. Dale, we need to get the regions more involved. How can we enhance the impact and value of APSE to the regions? Well, why don't we have workshops? And we call them, I think, drive-in workshops, those first ones that we had. So we would play the what if game, and then we would support each other. I remember going to, it might have been the first one, the first Sports Journalism Institute, and speaking. I remember going to a workshop. I think it was the Atlantic Coast region. Actually, might have been the first one. I remember going there and leading some sort of seminar, so I think that I think that it's not so much an anecdote, although I could pull them out if I slept on it. It's a feeling and a way of working together that you really retain and remember over the years.
What was your approach to organizing and putting on the summer convention while you were president?
Well, my approach to that was let the people that were in charge of it do a great job. Okay. I guess I was in charge on the step ladder for the officers 1 year for the convention, but I just remember it being a bear. But every step on the step ladder was a bear. I was in charge of the contest. You try to avoid people judging where they might have a conflict of interest, and you have this spreadsheet and it's driving you crazy. And then you're trying to pull together when it comes convention time, and you're involved with that. You're trying to pull together the seminars and what's hot this year. You don't want to over plan so far ahead that you miss something that's hot coming up. You want to be respectful of people's time and the choices they might want to make. So what are going to be the general sessions, and look, it's the same now as it was then. Being an officer for APSE, certainly president, but also being an officer in APSE is not for the faint of heart.
How did you then balance your role as an officer with APSE with your role at the Miami Herald?
Well, I remember writing my column as sports editor, as APSE president for the newsletter at 2 a.m. You do the best you can. You try to juggle. You can't let APSE get in the way of what you need to do with your primary duties have to be for your news organization, for your sports department. And so you work, is this any different? You work Saturdays, you work Sundays, you work late at night, you balance it. When you go home, as Ed Storen really tried hard to do, you're at home and you don't take phone calls. But it's tough. I'll tell you this, you get very good at knowing how much you can get done in a half-hour period when you have to juggle so many different things like that. Okay, I've got a half hour here. I think I can knock out my column for the APSE newsletter. No, it's going to take me 45. You get very good at organizing your time, but in the end, it's all worth it. It's just been a very rewarding experience for me to be involved with APSE.
We talked about what you dealt with the NCAA and betting. Were there any other challenges that you faced as APSE president?
Oh, that was the thing that really comes to mind. I think the challenge, there's always a challenge with the contest. There's always a challenge with these little fires that you have to put out. Honestly, if I had to tell you what the biggest fire was, or the biggest opportunity when I was APSE president, it would have been the NCAA trying to censor sports sections. And I think that episode and the way we worked with the other journalism organizations, ASNE and SPJ and so forth, and galvanized the Associated Press, of course, was involved. I think that helped the credibility, the influence, the impact, and the power of APSE by working through that, and the NCAA backing down. I think that was, and I'm proud of that. I think it was a step for APSE to have that kind of leverage, and also that kind of respect that it has earned all through the years. But that helped in 1994 when we enlisted APME and the other organizations. We had the lead; they backed us up, and I think we earned some credibility throughout the news industry because of that, and I'm proud of that.
What has being involved with APSE meant to you on a personal level?
Well, aside from the friendships, the shared experiences, the challenges, the one thing that has really stuck with me over the years with APSE is this: APSE is still a success. It's a big success. And, when we get involved in things, whether it's our individual newsrooms, maybe they've lost resources over the years. Maybe we get involved in some extracurricular activities. Maybe it's nonprofits. I started a nonprofit in Detroit that went for a while. It was killed by the pandemic. And you look back on things that you've been involved in, and the meaningful thing to me about APSE is how it's persevered. It's had to change, and it changed. It's had to meet new challenges, and it's met them. And that, to me, aside from my own time with APSE, I'm proud of the fact that APSE is still around. It's still around and kicking as hard as ever. I mean, the things that are going on, and I said this last summer at the convention, the things that are going on that have persevered, like the Sports Journalism Institute and the other things that APSE has gotten into, all the digital challenges that APSE has adapted to and welcomed over the years, the APSE Foundation. All of these things are very forward-looking, and APSE has survived because it's continued to be forward-looking. It's continued to meet its challenges. And as somebody who has been involved and made my own little contributions to the organization, that's a source of pride that this organization is still so strong. That's very meaningful to me.
What advice would you have for future presidents of the organization to help the organization keep moving forward and allow those future presidents to be successful?
Well, don't be afraid of change. It doesn't mean change for change's sake. You still have standards. You still have credibility to uphold. Every once in a while, Bill Eichenberger shares, because I'm a past president, an application to join APSE. Sometimes I vote on that. Sometimes I don't, because I don't feel close enough to it anymore. But I think that if you keep your standards, and the standards and the goals don't change, you can do all sorts of innovations and applying new creative ways to enhance sports journalism, ways to enhance APSE as an organization. So it's keep your standards, keep your credibility, think through every issue, but don't be afraid of change. And APSE is an example, I think, of organizations not being afraid of change over the years.
Yeah. What are you doing now? And talk a little bit about that.
Well, I have 13 grandchildren, and so none of them live where I live, which is in New Orleans now, and so we travel a lot to see them. We're involved. My wife and I, Vicky, are involved in some nonprofit work. We volunteer our services to the point where I wonder how I ever had time to actually work for a living before I retired, because we still stay busy and we do travel quite a bit. But chances like this to be involved with APSE, there's a couple other professional organizations I'm involved with. It's amazing how busy you can be in retirement, and how much you don't have time to think about the past. I appreciate the opportunity today to think a little bit about the past and maybe the future of APSE.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, or any other memories you'd like to share about APSE?
Well, I have a lot of memories that are probably better elaborated on in the hospitality room, but I remember Henry Freeman and I at a convention in New Orleans, walking around and saying, when we hear some good music, we'll stop and go in. And we were in the French Quarter, and we stopped and went in a whole lot of times. I remember a boat ride in Portland where somebody had the idea, came up at the hospitality room, well, let's take a boat ride up the river. So we did that. I think the sun was coming up. There's all of these things. Oh, and then there was the tennis match that the hotel security put a stop to. That also started with a conversation in the hospitality room. So I'm a little afraid to go to the hospitality room this year, because who knows what in the world's going to come out of that. But you just make great friends, you make great colleagues, and those memories never leave you. Hey, there's one other thing I'd like to say if we're kind of getting to the end, and
Sure.
And that is, if you're a sports editor that might want to get involved in some other part of the newsroom, maybe get involved in news, maybe become a top editor at some point, you can rest assured, if you want to do that, and you don't have to follow your interests, But if you want to do that, you can rest assured that your time as sports editor has prepared you very, very well to make a transition like that, if you want to do it. The ability to make decisions quickly, move quick on deadline. Digital hasn't changed that. We used to say, how are we going to make the street edition, which was street sales only? And then we got to turn around and do this, and then we got to do that. Well, the deadline pressure hasn't lessened at all over the years. Digital carries its own pressure. Let's get it up fast, but let's make sure we're saying what we know, not assuming what we don't know. You know, so there's all of these pressures, but I think the teamwork that sports departments engender and require transfers well to the rest of the newsroom. You know, so if you're a sports editor and you want to do something else, it worked well for me, and I really did feel very well prepared. I remember one night I was in a rotation. When I was at the Miami Herald and I was sports editor, I was in a rotation of editors that would come in on weekends and be in charge of the A section. So one weekend, the Soviet Union, when I happened to be in charge of the A section, was falling apart, and it was dissolving. And a news editor said to me, "It's too bad we're not going to be able to keep up with this." And I said, "Well, we are going to keep up with it. We're going to publish it." And this is really before digital, before the internet. And he said, "How are we going to do that?" I said, "We're going to move quickly, and we're not going to go through the 3-part editing process. It's going to be a 1-part editing process if need be. We're going to make sure what we're doing, but we're going to get it done." And I think that the experiences and I went to the sports department and said, "You know, those late deadlines that you use to get in the late ball scores, we're switching now. You've got the A section deadlines, and we're taking your late deadlines because we got the Soviet Union falling apart." Look, things like this, the training that you get and the experiences you get working in sports, whether you're writing on deadline, whether you're editing on deadline, whether you're planning a big event coverage, those experiences really translate very well to doing something else in the newsroom if you want to do it.
That's terrific insight, and I appreciate your time. Is there anything else you want to add, Paul?
No, just thank you. Thank you. And really congratulations thank you, Erik, and congratulations to APSE, and my friend George is winding down his time as president. I'm sure that he's going to celebrate that. But you know, I'm just very proud of the organization, and I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody in Las Vegas.
Well, thanks so much for your time, Paul. I appreciate it.
Thank you.